and onward with Mary. A good and holy day to all of you, dear children, in the Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary, and in the most chaste heart of Saint Joseph. Welcome back to our morning feature, Saints and Coffee, an extraordinary feature for the extraordinary time we are all experiencing. Today is, in fact, Saturday. Generally, there is no Santia Cafe segment. Saturday, the 26th of April, is the day on which the novena to the Divine Mercy comes to an end, and Jesus invites us to pray for the lukewarm, for those who made him suffer the most. This is something that has always struck me deeply, that Jesus says that in Gethsemane and during the Passion, those who made him suffer the most were not the sinners. Let's say more obstinate. There aren't there? No, the lukewarm souls. Because lukewarm souls are capable of nullifying the mother. Think about it. That is, the one who loves in front of someone who remains indifferent dies. Indifference, or lukewarmness, as we might also call it, is the most nullifying response to love. If there is something that holds back, love is not hatred. It is indifference. Think about it. It is indifference, which also manifests as lukewarmness. Lukewarm souls are those who indeed today, of whom pseudo-Roman Catholicism is full, pseudo-Roman Catholicism made up of people for whom the gospel is worth as much as it is worth. We must adapt to the times because those who love are radical. Think about this as well. Those who love are radical and faithful. A woman who loves a man loves him with her whole self. She does not love him halfway. A woman knows when I lie. She never loves halfway. Caio? Is that so? Do you all agree? There is no such thing as half-hearted love in a woman. For us men, it is something different, in the sense that there is work, there are activities, but for a woman, love is everything. So when a woman loves, that's it for her. She suffers. He would always like to be with the person he loves. Love is radical. And then love is also deeply feminine. Radicality and fidelity, a woman who loves. The fact is that time has passed. I have said before, in some tombs, also in Italy, the Renaissance and late medieval period saw young women, wives and newlywed spouses, who died prematurely, all belonging to noble families. They were depicted in tombs in marble with a dog at their feet. There is always a dog and a little dog curled up at the feet of the woman's figure. It signifies fidelity. So when Jesus says that those who made him suffer the most are the tense souls, he is speaking like a woman in love. He can certainly do that, because Jesus is in love with us. And how much it comforts him when a soul prays, throws itself at the feet of the tabernacle, recites the rosary, Jesus, I love you, avoids sin, always thinks of Jesus. Then Jesus is comforted by that. But instead, a soul dressed as a priest, as a cardinal, as a pseudo-pope, as a priest, as a monsignor, as I do not know what else, as a nun, or as a layman, a committed laywoman, who instead is not faithful, is not radical, is in fact today the Catholicism of Bergoglio, which at last today draws a line under it from the point of view of the person. Unfortunately, it seems, no, not it seems, but rather for what awaits us. Tomorrow awaits us later. That is the topic of today, of this morning and this evening. As we will now see, because we must face the journey together. So Bergoglio's is clearly a Catholicism, a lukewarm pseudo-Catholicism, because it's lukewarm, because it is not enlivened. Of course, with regard to attention to the poor, as has been said, social concerns, environmentalism, yes, but Jesus Christ didn't exactly come to save the environment. I don't think it says that anywhere in the gospel. Jesus Christ came to save hearts, to save souls, to save sinners, and not to leave them in sin, because that would be far too convenient. It is a typically Bergoglian slogan, distinctly, markedly satanic. To think of leaving them, welcoming them, embracing them, blessing them, I love you, but leaving them in sin. Lukewarm souls can nullify the mother. There's nothing to be done. Bergoglio did this. He left people where they were. And so it is a pseudo-Catholicism, a lukewarm Catholicism, but you can see it very clearly. This Catholicism of Bergoglio by now has moved forward in the direction of paying attention to the poor, of paying attention to the marginalized. All the contradictions, 1,000 contradictions that each of these frontiers has, it brings with it. For example, it is undeniably true that we are experiencing global warming. Zichichi, who is certainly not just anybody, maintains that this is not the case. So why does Bergoglio embrace this theory if it is not scientifically proven? It is just one example, the 1,000 contradictions of this man, the 1,000 contradictions. And then yet another example, this one about immigrants. It is right to have an approach. The church has a human approach, Christian, towards these people who come from countries devastated by wars, but at the same time within the order of Christian ethics. It is established that just as there is a right to emigrate, there is a right not to emigrate, says Benedict XVI. So there are 1,000 contradictions. So it seems very significant to me that today Jesus says that on the last day of the novena, what made him suffer the most are the lukewarm souls. They are those who, in the name of Jesus Christ, undertake the journey of faith with the concessions they themselves establish. It is just like the half-in-love man, who then betrays. The half-in-love man betrays. Nothing can be done. That's it. That's why. So today is Saturday, 26th April. So now it's time for the Saints and Coffee segment. The title of today's feature is Bergoglio's Conclave. There it is. And yet this evening at 9 o'clock, we shall meet again, as I said. There it is. The title, The Future of the Doubts. I had said doubts in quotation marks. The future of the doubts between Bergoglio and the Conclave. Now this is very important because, as you know, in 2023, 5 doubts were presented to Bergoglio, to which he replied. So the question is, since Bergoglio has said that he will gladly go beyond apostolic tradition, what do the cardinals entering the conclave intend to do? We will talk about this evening. Also, let me remind you that in the afternoon at 6 o'clock there will be the last day of the novena with the recitation of the Holy Rosary. I would also like to remind you that it is advisable to sign up again for the Perpetual Rosary, because once more there is a request for enrollments. It would be a shame to stop it right now when there is such a great need. So I invite you to contact Simona at the telephone number you see in the description, or simply send a text message to confirm your participation. Well then, today is Saturday. On the 26th of April, there are the funerals in St. Peter's Square for Bergoglio, and they are arriving. They arrived while we are speaking. They will already be there in St. Peter's Square. Personally, I do not watch the images. Then everyone can choose to do as they wish, heads of state from all over the world, but that's just how it is. Someone asked, doesn't it embarrass you? That's because he's a head of state for us, so then head of state of the Vatican. So I never have this. So it seems perfectly understandable to me, because from the Vatican, as Vatican City, many diplomatic crossroads take place, those things. So for me, it is completely normal for Trump to arrive, or I don't know, for someone else to arrive. One of these people, I'm not going to name names, pays a Masonic tribute. Naturally, among themselves, they support each other in life and in death. This is well known. However, I have no problem with there being a funeral. Rather, I ask myself, what is the use, as Jesus says in the Gospel of Matthew, what is the use for a man to gain the whole world, if then he loses his own soul? I am not saying this in relation because I have been among the most, in this phase here, distinguished, yet they tell me what they tell me, yet I have not said that he is in hell, Bergoglio. Because I am not interested. That is his problem now. It is his problem, not mine. You reap what you sow, naturally. He abandoned a false Catholicism because he founded a false Catholicism. I say this in a strictly theological sense, dogmatically speaking. Where does one go beyond the gospel? There cannot be the Church of Jesus Christ. For Christ's church is the gospel's home. Today, Brother Celestino gave a very, engaging homily also from a personal point of view, so I do not feel able to repeat it. I refer you to listening to that homily. Perhaps you could even download it and set it aside. And so then I would like to thank those who helped me with the writing of the articles that appear in the newspapers, here and there, and lends me a helping hand. To sum things up a bit, because you can imagine these days in the big daily newspapers how much stuff comes out, but it does make a mark. For example, I'll tell you something you'll find amusing. This morning, while buying Republica, which if you can imagine, Republica, those who help me say it's an exhausting thing. Reading Republica, on the contrary, given the way it's idolized, Pope of the left, obviously the Pope of socialist emergencies. No, those things there. Today, as a free gift with Republica, there was this BIM. Do you know what this is? But before you cast your votes as you did, do you know what this is? Well, this is entitled It's. Well done, Tommaso, Pope Francis, and Eugenio Scalfari. Dialogue between believers and non-believers. There is basically death for each person's own, to whom it is deserved. This booklet is offered again. So the story, this booklet is incredible. Today it is the gift with Republica. It is incredible, because here Bergoglio, in a sensational manner, right at the very beginning of his pseudo-pontificate, the foundations of all the heresies we know, right at the very limits of inaudibility. The Vatican had hurried to intervene. Do you remember the embarrassment caused by Bergoglio's statements, for example, that the souls of the damned, when they die, self-extinguish? This is pure heresy, because it is not so. The Church teaches that it exists. The Church, and when they come at me, poking their fingers in my eyes, even recently, I don't know, saying that I make up this story about the false church. But excuse me, the Church says that hell exists. It is a dogma of faith. If someone comes along claiming to be the Pope and denies that the dogma exists, you see, and everyone follows him, that is false, that is fake, and there is nothing to be done about it. Then, that God is not Catholic, there are other amusing statements by Bergoglio that today Republica, on the day of Pope Francis's funeral, offers to its readers. Here it is. This is interesting. We will have the chance, probably this should be kept safe. Because I didn't have it, it's a lovely present. Interesting, the way Eugenio Scalfari speaks. A lot is, let's say, that the Church tried its own Vatican press, and Vatican for the first period. And well, I remember it well. He was still a parish priest and denied it, saying that Scalfari was the interpreter of the Pope's thinking. But excuse me, this is just idiotic, because if I grant an interview and the interviewer says something different from what I wanted to say, I intervene immediately, especially if I am a moral figure, because people should not be led into error. Right? Did Bergoglio intervene? No. He did not intervene, so the Vatican press came. But then after some time, the book of interviews was published. Here it is now again on the day of Bergoglio's funeral. So if you want to pay tribute to Bergoglio, read this. But I have brought with me a book that you will hardly believe I have in my library. This book, here it is by Walter Kasper, who today will certainly be there, I presume, in St. Peter's Square, to mourn the death of the Pope of the Revolution. Walter Kasper, published by Querniana. I believe this book is from 2015. I began reading it with interest, because I too was still within the orbit of deception. And it is entitled Pope Francis, The Revolution of Tenderness and Love. Do you know that here Kasper, basically to make it clear how it was all a Masonic plan, he sets out the rules that Bergoglio will then follow. In fact, Bergoglio in the first Angelus, do you remember, had said, "Bravo, this Cardinal Mercy." So you see the headlines, the Pope of Surprises, Continuity and Reform, Mercy, a key word of the pontificate, ecclesiology of the people of God, in practice, ecumenical vision, new emphases in interreligious dialogue, a church that is poor for the poor. You see, the entire detailed program of the issue was already there. Well, so now let's move on a bit. We are already in medias res, evidently, the conclave of Bergoglio. Today, at long last, the final curtain falls, and the spotlights are switched off on this rather ambiguous affair, contradictory, very problematic affair of Jorge Maria Bergoglio. He is being taken, I believe, today itself after the funeral to Santa Maria Maggiore, where I personally will not set foot, not until the Pope is removed, who was not a Pope, or, as it will be written, was an anti-Pope. And after that, immediately, as you will see, but this has already been happening in recent days, the focus is on the conclave. And immediately the issue that is arising is that of Becciu, Cardinal Becciu, Giovanni Becciu, because Becciu has basically created the problem of a deadlock. That is, can he take part in the conclave or not? I remind you of this for the last time. There is that cardinal who found himself involved in the multi-million-pound affair of the purchase of the building in the City of London, and he is paying for everyone. Apparently, this is the case. I already find it very strange, because, it's not really an action. I don't know if you agree with me, because I'm not an expert. I don't think it's a banking initiative. Such a heavy shareholding situation as this one could have been carried forward, and someone could have been responsible for it. Only Betsy. I don't know. That's what I think. We are talking about millions and millions of euros, about a business that was quite significant. But when it came to light, evidently there was some mole. And so they found the scapegoat, and there is a Vatican investigation underway. The law teaches that until there is the final verdict from the Court of Cassation, there is the so-called presumption, I think that is what it is called, of innocence, of not being guilty. That is, the trial is still ongoing. It's not that the suspect is guilty. Otherwise, what is the point of the trial? If the suspect is guilty, then there is no trial, right? Either Becciu is under investigation, Becciu is under investigation. And this is from yesterday. Today's Repubblica, this is interesting, and this is from today. It's today's Repubblica, the one that gives the transcripts of the conversations with Scalfari. We read that the cardinals are at an impasse over Becciu. He insists, I will be able to vote. Look, this issue here, which is starting to take center stage, could become decisive in prolonging things. Who knows until when the start of the conclave, unless they make a decision straight away. But why prevent him from taking part in the conclave? But why, in your opinion, are some cardinals, those who go inside, not guilty of crimes that are certainly worse, at the very least, than those committed by Becciu? September 2020. Bergoglio removed the cardinal from his role as prefect of the Congregation for the Causes of Saints and stripped him of the rights connected to the cardinalate. Shortly afterwards, Becciu, who nevertheless remained a cardinal, ended up on trial in the Vatican court and was finally convicted at first instance in December 2023 for the purchase and sale. Fraud involving a building in central London, decided at the time when the cardinal was substitute for general affairs at the Secretariat of State. Since then, Bergoglio has allowed Becciu from time to time to take part in consistories, but he has never restored his lost rights, and he died without resolving the issue. Now, among the rights of a cardinal is that of entering a conclave, but electing a new pope is also a duty, and so if Becciu does not take part, he fails in this duty, but if he does take part, he violates the papal decree. It is really a serious problem to solve. Did you hear that? Because a cardinal has the obligation, before reaching 80 years of age, to enter the conclave to elect the pope. He's lost his right, duty, or right. But I would ask the cardinals, as Brother Celestine does. The riddle contains another one. Interesting. Who is this? Jacopo Scaramuzzi. The puzzle contains another one. Can the general congregation solve the dilemma and restore the cardinal's rights or not? That is, who must decide whether Becciu can enter the conclave? Clearly, the plenary congregations gathering over the past few days, with the cardinals, whether or not he was present, have been significant, given that Becciu took part in the cardinals' meetings. He has formally requested to be reinstated. So, Cardinal Agostino Marchetto, a long-serving diplomat, stated, "I could not imagine that this decision would be entrusted to all the cardinals who are meeting. These matters concern the future pope." Giovanni Claude Hollerich, the cardinal, let me remind you, who proposed this, he is entering the conclave. They are astonished, because I say that this is the pause that we can, I repeat, up until the announcement, and here this is said to you in the extraordinary. We can hope, the unexpected, the impossible, because nothing is impossible for God. But those conditions I mentioned yesterday, that Bergoglio be condemned, that it be recognized, that the last reigning pope was Pope Benedict XVI, and that all the errors of the false church be condemned, then the false church died with Bergoglio. Otherwise, everything suggests that things are moving forward and we are going our own way. It is our duty to pay close attention to everything, to show that we are not a sect, and that I, the 14th, was there in the blood, whatever my detractors may say. So, Hollerich, and that cardinal told you that chapter 1 of the letter to the Romans can also be silly because since it condemns the sin against nature, you see? So since instead we have to welcome gay people, let's remove the first chapter of the letter to the Romans. These people have gone mad. Removing a chapter from the Bible just because we no longer like it. They have gone mad. This Hollerich, you remember him, the one from the synod who wants women at the altar, he's one of the most progressive. And he's a Jesuit too, he said about Becciu. There's a papal decision, and I don't think the cardinals can overturn it. So Hollerich, who is, spoiler, man, leading figure of the opposition, of the great faction, of the mega Bergoglian faction, they do not want Becciu at the conclave. So you see that the situation could become sensational. This is the same article. Giovanni Maria Vian, former director of L'Osservatore Romano, wrote in Domani, he is how do you say? It is not a daily newspaper, it is a magazine in which Cardinal Pietro Parolin is said to have shown Becciu 2 letters. Dati lo scrit and signed by the pontiff with the letter F, which would exclude him from the conclave, one from 2023, the other from last March. But excuse me, if this were true, I do not believe it. What reason would Becciu have to show up? An out-of-place claim, that of Becciu. Why should he, if Bergoglio pointed this out to him, act like that? However, I have a suggestion for Becciu. Maybe he'll listen to him. He could say to Parolin, "But how dare you tell me what I have to do?" What Pope Francis said when you were the first not to observe the document he wrote about funerals. Unrequited love kills. Bergoglio had asked that the body should not be displayed, that the tomb should remain closed, and that it should be done quickly. Was any of this done? And so you, Parolin, since you have not done what Pope Francis said, why do you want me to do it? What Pope Francis said, if you do not do it, I will not do it either. At the limit. It will not be a historic occasion where, as he said, we appoint someone like Father Johannes. Since the situation is extraordinary, the events will be equally extraordinary, so we will witness a titanic clash between these cardinals. Put them together with the Rich and Müller, you see? To do that, put Zuppi and Burke together, unless they once again choose capitulation. As I expect, I'm talking about Burke, about Müller, and so on. Across the Tiber, they report that over the past few months, on several occasions, the Pope, when questioned about the Becciu affair, has avoided making up his mind, leaving the cardinal's situation unresolved. I believe it has been closed, it no longer exists, said Monsignor Vincenzo Paglia, interviewed yesterday. So he will not be able to vote? The answer, I do not think so. But it is really a very secondary issue. It is not at all secondary, because it must be decided whether Cardinal Becciu can enter the conclave or not. This is truly decisive. So, well, instead, yesterday, by the way, now about today's title, Bergoglio's Conclave. Children, I'm playing all the necessary cards. But you know me, and you know why I'm doing this, don't you? Because we are writing history. Tomorrow, no one will be able to say who it is. They will only be able to say, as my twin told me, well done. In fact, put it in writing that you have played all your cards, because now that we are all there to see what happens, even we, the little group left, we want to hope for the impossible. That is, I repeat, that a pope will emerge who refers to Benedict 16, define the canonical juridical short circuit of the false Pope Bergoglio, and condemn the heresies of Pope Francis. So it is a return to the past, and so we are fine with this. The false church is dead, otherwise not. Now, I tell you that it is beginning to emerge very clearly from the spurious statements of the cardinals who will enter the conclave. A clear will not to act, as all this is obvious, but it is obvious that they will not do it. However, we can hope, obviously, and are there signs? For example, this is from yesterday. In yesterday's Repubblica, there's a lengthy interview with Cardinal Giovanni Battista Re, who is celebrating the funeral today, because the cardinal, if I'm not mistaken, is the dean, that is, the most senior in terms of years as a cardinal. So he is celebrating the funeral in St. Peter's Square today. Cardinal Re, of course, is one of those whom we can hope will do something, a diplomat of long standing. I remember him at the age of today's seminarians when he was already a prefect, no less than bishops even then. So he is very advanced in age. In fact, he will not enter the conclave, 81 years old. He will not take part in the conclave. Giovanni Battista Re, however, is a prominent figure like Parolin, no less than Parolin. Giovanni Battista Re worked closely with John Paul II and with Benedict XVI, as well as with Bergoglio. So let us see what he says, and we will understand there. What is the direction of Bergoglio's conclave? What do I feel in these moments? Is it him speaking? Sadness, pain, and infinite sorrow, but also sincere gratitude. You think about the words because you are all people of the little remnant, rather wise. But also, one of the decisive cardinals is speaking, but also sincere gratitude to divine providence that allowed me to walk alongside a great pope who, by choosing to call himself, certainly not by chance, Francis, served with all his strength the Church until the very end, with love and dedication, always respectful of the values of the gospel. How can one bear this? How to cope? Always respectful of the values of the gospel, Pope Francis, devoting himself to peace for all humanity in our time, especially the poorest and most needy, like a loving father. Yes, really, truly, a father. With the care of a shepherd who tends his flock throughout his life. Then they ask him if he already had the homily ready. But today it's fine. That's what we care about. When he met him for the last time, he was no longer interested in anything else. Anyway, this is already quite a sign. It is already a very important sign of how things will go. Then, moreover, people talk about hidden directors. I mean, you know that when there is a conclave, it's not as if these cardinals don't know each other. They do know each other. So it's obvious that there must be some hidden directors, some cardinals, who act as points of reference for groups, mind you, not in the manner of the St. Gallen Mafia, because this would render the conclave invalid. However, it's obvious that this is allowed, you see. Before the conclave, it is permitted for there to be cardinals who invite others to their own homes. It has always happened. There's Cardinal Fazio and Cardinal Caio who invite you, a couple of cardinals, and they have low-key discussions about the directions, about which figure might be suitable. So give us the names of what these cardinals are like, from those you know. Who could possibly serve as hidden directors? These cardinals are, or perhaps would be, Raniero Cantalamessa. Do you remember him? For me, Pope Francis is Jesus on earth. This is Cardinal Cantalamessa. Then there could be Vangelo Bagnasco. Now I will read you the article by Vangelo Bagnasco. Vangelo Bagnasco is a Lasingerian, they say, like Vangelo Scalfari, the Archbishop Emeritus of Milan. They are created by grazie. Parolin II was brought to prominence by Benedict XVI. Clear, not particularly enthusiastic at all. Deniers of Bergoglian politics. So then, let us see. Because Giovanni Battista Re's career already comes from the past, glorious, like Whitey Veratzinger. And yet, he tells you that Pope Francis has lived the values of the gospel. So much sadness, a giant pontiff. And that's already something. So let's see now what Bagnasco will say. Bagnasco, what could he possibly say? The papal sweepstakes are beginning, so people start naming some cardinals, which I'll spare you. It's better because we don't have much time to waste. Instead, let's move on. Then of course, there's the trans community, which now feels orphaned. The trans community, we trans people abandoned by everyone, he made us feel more in tune with the times. I met him twice. A trans woman, she writes, or a trans man. I don't know how you say it. Thank God I'm not an expert. Note this, Maria Conchetta. Listen, I met him twice. I know that prostituting oneself is dirty, but he made me feel different. Think. Marcella just seems so simple. He met Pope Francis, who made me feel different, but he didn't say to him, abandon sin. Don't sin anymore. Don't ruin your soul. Be careful or you'll end up in hell. No, he made me feel different. Now I then... No, all right. What does it mean that he makes me feel different? All right, let's move on. Let's move on, guys. So finally today's article, because, well, it's interesting to see. I haven't read it yet because I want to know what Bagnasco says. Bagnasco, mind you, he won't be entering the conclave, I think, because he's over 80 years old. But he is one of those cardinals who can, as I was saying just a moment ago, serve as a point of reference, especially for those who might believe, well, that Bergoglio's path should not be continued. His work, just leave it aside. But then there is this Bagnasco. Today, when there are Bergoglio's funerals, I want to see what he says in that newspaper, this one. La Verità, in today's interview with Bagnasco, I want to know if he says that the last pope was Benedict XVI. For example, that Bergoglio made enormous mistakes, who betrayed the gospel. That Fiducia Supplicans is a scandal. Bagnasco should say so, given his position. These ones are even worse than Bergoglio, actually. Let's listen. The illness and death of Pope Francis is not an interview. It is an article that he writes himself. They are like the summary of his pontificate. Synthesis and summit. He resisted the illness that was slyly approaching with great strength, and then it seized him. Well, I do not care. In that almost stubborn strength of illness, there was the sweetness of faith, which became more and more trust in the Lord Jesus. And what if, instead, it were true that he had rediscovered the sacraments? But look, this is an institution that is not the one founded by Jesus Christ. Be careful of those who try to make you believe that this is the Catholic Church. These ones have surrendered even worse than the others. There is no God where there is falsehood. Bagnasco knows that Bergoglio has broken with the 2,000-year-old faith. He knows it, but now he is dead and can no longer speak. And so they emerge, and they try to save what can be saved. From the Loggia of St. Peter's, Pope Francis was visibly declaring in his very flesh that the reason for his life and his ministry was Christ. But after all, the newspapers are the ones who said that I kidnap women. So what do you expect? Still, it hurts that it's someone like Bagnasco saying these things. Here it hurts for them. And for those who, like Unicum, expect something to change, nothing will change. Today, I listened to a short extract of the speech given by... So, what's his name? Now I'll tell you, just have a moment of patience. His name is... He's the founder of Sant'Egidio, but right now his first name is completely escaping me. Riccardi, Andrea Riccardi. He went to La Setta, interviewed by Lily Gruber. Can we play the audio? Just the audio, maybe not even that, because he says something really interesting. Oh well, I'll tell you in my own words. At a certain point they ask him, Andrea Riccardi, a historian of the church, founder of an important Sant'Egidio community, who goes to Italian drawing rooms, and they asked him what the future of the conclave is, who will be elected. He replies like this, whoever is elected, one thing is certain, there is no going back, and we will continue with Pope Francis's reforms. But let us meanwhile look at all the aspects, then, that someone not aligned like Bagnasco might say something different. Yet no, he speaks with even more polish than the Bergoglians do. The testimony of evangelical charity is the consequence. Of the courage of faith, Pope Francis has been a minister of love. This is not something he does straight away. Saints up and Pope Francis, minister of the love of Christ, with constant reminders of the many forms of poverty that afflict me, our Lord's suffering. This few laughs at this measure. This falsity, this lack of transparency, is not what I think. I swear to you that what Bagnasco said today is not what I think. How can they be so hypocritical? Indifference. Pope Francis's loud voice rang out as if from above and echoes the word of Jesus. What wretches they are, though. It was not the expression of a purely human solidarity, but an evangelical one. Nothing, not a word about those things that Bergoglio has said over these years, not a mention of Bergoglian ambiguity, not a syllable about the widespread heresy, about the rampant apostasy, nothing, not a single syllable. In conclusion, behind that tombstone with the great cross and the name Francesco, where he is now buried, this continues to resonate, a courageous and active faith. Before him and after him, this message will continue. Do you understand? Bagnasco, not Hollerich. Bagnasco, not Zuppi. Bagnasco, not Fernandez. The situation regarding Italian cardinals, moreover, is rather bleak, because if there are any cardinals who, at a push, we can hope might decide to do more than just something, they are not Italian. That Italian scenario is really an American one. Burke, an African called Sarah, and a German called Miller. These are the ones who, at most, they are saying Miller. I do not know where this news came from. He apparently said that if action is not taken to condemn fiducia supplicans and to put a limit on the lack of transparency in the magisterium, then this ambiguous language will continue. He said he used the word schism. This morning it was pointed out to me as if it were an earthquake. Burke has been talking about the possibility of a schism for years. But in the end, they did nothing. The schism has already happened, with Bergoglio, who was not pope, and separated the church, creating a false one, with a false gospel, which is not the real one, abandoning the gospel, not only false, but therefore abandoning that of Jesus Christ. They are the ones who have split away. It does not matter if they are more numerous, do you understand? It does not matter. They must appeal to whomever they wish and to those who wish to take part. Appeal. To today's Papa Boys, one of today's Papa Boys, as La Verità writes about, from yesterday is Fabio, the one who writes, I was one of those faithful believers who used to say, I am a believer, but you see, he welcomed back those believers who always felt the need to add a but. He then gathered us and calmly said, no, there is nothing to worry about. And he repeated, no, there is nothing. Come along, he added. All of this is perfectly fine. This Fabio Fazio. However, apparently, the numbers of people attending the funerals are not that high. As they do, I believe, we will talk about this when the time comes. Instead, I want to conclude for this morning. Then let me remind you that this evening we will look into the doubts in more depth. The title for this evening is important, The Future of the Doubts between Bergoglio and the Conclave. Thank you. In light of what we are saying, you can immediately see that. But there you have put, I'm saying this to the control room, the dome of St. Peter's from the past. Why are you showing that one? You do not want to deceive people as well, I hope. Show today's one, which is dark, which is gloomy, which is gray. This is still the dome of St. Peter's, back in the days of Benedict XVI. Show the dome as it is today, which already makes a difference. So, Riccardi's video can be sent, but is it from La Seta? Be cautious. So, before concluding, what time is it? Is it possible? Well, let's try to play it then. Let's play the clip, which lasts 2.5 minutes, so you can see I'm not making anything up. I repeat, Andrea Riccardi is a guest in the sitting room of Lily Gruber on La Sette, interviewed on 8:30, on the future of the church after Bergoglio. Listen very carefully to what he says, so you can see for yourselves. Who will be the Pope, the Toto Papa? It's a fair question also because we find ourselves in a void of moral international leaders. And today, the Pope must be a strong man. He must be a man up to the challenges. The Italian newspapers mention those 3 names, the ones you mentioned. The Italian newspapers, Parolin, Zicicci, and Pizzaballa. Generally, Italian newspapers, they never get it right. No, but they also mentioned foreigners, these 3 Italians. Yes, but, for example, at the time of Bergoglio's conclave, they put forward the name of a cardinal who then didn't succeed, while Bergoglio did, even though nobody had mentioned him. Everyone was thinking of Scalfari. That's absolutely true. Major papers would use his photo on the front page, him at prayer, and so on. Now the problem is that the 3 names refer to an Italian pope. They refer to an Italian pope, but why does it have to be an Italian pope? That is the question. But I believe that today none of the cardinals who are in Rome or in the world has an option in mind, because they still have to meet. There's this sense of disorientation that has arisen from the disappearance of Francis, which is very strong, but this is Francis's conclave. He appointed almost all of them himself, and he chose them. Yes, it's decisive that the 110 he chose, the cardinals, out of 135, are pro-Bergoglio, who may not necessarily remain, yes, because the Bergoglians are not a school of thought. Excuse me, since we are talking about Pope Francis as a great world leader for peace, as a progressive, if I may, to define, will the next Pope be a progressive or a conservative? But I believe that he will be a Pope who cannot deny the processes set in motion by Francis. There is no going back. The real question is how far forward we go, how we move forward, and what the Pope's resistance will be. But do you hope for it, or do you believe it, that it's not possible to go back? I believe it. I believe it because, and I believe that the figure of this Pope, the emotion, the funerals, the attention around this confirm that Bergoglio has represented a step forward from which there is no turning back, a step forward from which there is no going back. But Bergoglio himself was a... So the control room just told me that the video could be shown again, and I'm pleased about that. So because you were able to listen with your own ears. Important statements from which I took the title of this morning's segment, Bergoglio's Conclave. Because Andrea Riccardi, who is not just anybody, he is an important opinion leader in the progressive world. So dear to the Bergoglian sensibility, he said, that what is about to begin is Francis's conclave. This is serious. The conclave never belongs to any previous pope. He has done his part, that's enough, the Holy Spirit points to him. This is the conclave of France. These are Riccardi's words, who adds, the Bergoglians, this is the phrase, he made 3 phrases. This is the second one, which seems the softest, but in my opinion it is the heaviest. The Bergoglians are not a school, which means they are a kingdom. They are a model, not a school. A school sooner or later closes. Generally, there's no Santi e Cafe segment. On the contrary, no, I'm not a school. The Bergoglians, those rich soups, they are not a school. Understood? Fernandez, I'm really not a school. What am I? I am, he does not say it, we could say a kingdom, a model. For this reason, immediately after his striking statement, he adds that the conclave will not be able to deny the ongoing reform processes of Pope Francis. There is no turning back. That's it for this morning. We have, regarding the truth from yesterday, still from yesterday, an article about the conservative cardinals, that is, those who are not Bergoglian, who are entering the conclave. In short, there are quite few of them, because Bergoglio has appointed as electors 108 cardinals, 108 Bergoglians will enter. Those created by Benedict XVI, who will enter the conclave, will be 22. 108 out of 22, those of Wojtyla 5, 22 and 5 make 27. Altogether, the true church, which stopped at Benedict XVI, brings together 27 cardinals, the false one, inside the conclave. The partisans of Satan are 106, 108, 108 against 27, right? This should be good. And the names are given of the leaders of these cardinals, not Bergoglians, one of whom, however, at least one is a Bergoglian appointee. We need to see about Ike. Here are these 5 cardinals. There is the African Robert Sarah, the Hungarian Peter Erdo, the American Raymond Leobork, the German Müller, and the Dutchman Tijn Ike. These are cardinals, apart from Cardinal Müller, appointed by Pope Benedict XVI. The only one who was elected and made a cardinal by Bergoglio is Müller, who, however, has never aligned himself with Bergoglio's, let us put it elegantly, transformational policy. Among those who will be there, only 22 were appointed by Benedict XVI and 5 by Giovanni Parolin II. Given the situation, it seems difficult. It seems that they are listening to our reflections, a comeback for the Church linked to the defense of the Ratzingerians. Non-negotiable values, liturgy, discipline, communion, sexual morality. Oh, here that is exactly what we want to say. It is no longer just a matter of opposing viewpoints or schools of thought. Here it is either the true church or the false church. Nothing to discuss. Because I maintain that this is all the work of the devil. Only I maintain it. Because I know that the others are not capable of doing so. Sooner or later they will do it. What Bergoglio has set in motion is the season of the final clash, the final trial for the church, with the establishment of the mystical body of the Antichrist. So these cardinals are somewhat concerned evidently that at the conclave there might end up being no consideration for the need to go back. But instead, the 108 cardinals, you can be sure of it, the 108 Bergoglian cardinals are going in there quite clearly to move forward. There is no going back, he says. Andrea Riccardi says, there really is no turning back. Truly, there is no turning back. And it's a profoundly weighty statement. It is tough for those who would still like to hope, like Juna Kum, that there might be a turning point in terms of respect for tradition, and yet the cardinals really make it clear that this will not happen. My dears, for today I have finished, at least for this morning. I do not know if you want to make any phone calls, given the, how shall I say, this special episode on Saturday morning. But tonight at 9, we'll carry on with our reflections. I'm doing this for you. I've got everything clearly laid out. Naturally, you are clear about them too, but putting them in front of us, we also form a sort of club. These are the consultations, the plenary congregations, with these reflections of ours. We are holding the plenary congregations. We are patiently among ourselves, reviewing what the situations are, what criteria. Here's the situation. We should do the same. So this evening, I look forward to seeing you with this topic, the future of doubts between Bergoglio and the conclave. I recommend you read in memory of the testament of these dialogues with Eugenio Scalfari, both of whom have passed to the other side. Look here at this passage. First of all, he says to Scalfari, he asks me if the God of the Christians forgives those who do not believe and do not seek faith. Given that God's mercy has no limits, if one turns to him with a sincere and contrite heart, the issue for those who do not believe in God lies in obeying their own conscience. Sin, even for those who do not have faith, exists when one goes against one's conscience. Listening to and obeying it means, in fact, making a decision when faced with what is perceived as good or as evil. You know what I tell you, though, this has been altered. One must be careful. It has been altered. I need to look at the original one. Because he hadn't said it exactly like that. He said that there is no Catholic God. He said exactly this in that interview there, that there is no Catholic God.